I never forgot that day. And that day really, really stuck with me. Elon Musk, the one who tweets something in the whole, he can crash the market with one tweet. A lot of the times when you go into work, when you become an engineer and you go into industry, you can become complacent. And that's why your job is important. So do not become complacent. Why did you start engineering school? Why do you want to become an engineer? Do you want to, of course, be proud of yourself and you want to make your family proud? Because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 7 of the Alex Cedar podcast, where we discuss engineering career, self-development, self-growth, reflections, and all the good stuff. So thank you for being here. There's a couple of things that we're going to go over today, and I'm going to divide this episode in 2 parts. The first half, which is going to go over some current events and what's happening right now very quickly, and then also a personal development tip of the day. And then the second half of the episode is going to focus on a Q&A. I have 2 questions from 2 young engineers, and I'm going to give you my take on their questions. Okay, so the first thing I want to say here is that with respect to it's Thanksgiving week, by the way. Today is November 23rd, 2021. And there's a lot of things to be grateful for, right? What are you thankful for? Let me know in the comments, because I think that one of the things that happens when we are always running around and we always focus on our school and our work, we go and hang out with friends, we go and hang out with family, we watch TV, we work on our projects, we work on our business. Whatever it is that you have going on in your life, a lot of the times is a little difficult to turn around and say, you know what, I've come a long way. You know what, I'm grateful for what I have around me. You know what, I'm grateful for the people that I have around me. And I think that in order for us to achieve that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction when it comes to our emotional health and also mental health, I personally think that having gratitude is huge. I think it can be extremely beneficial for us. And so I think that it's Thanksgiving week, not only of course Thanksgiving because of the history of what happened, but I think when it in a more modern time, it's even more important, because especially in the United States, when we're always running around, and we seem I'm gonna be honest, I think that we seem to be busy, but most of the time we're just wasting time. I include myself in there sometimes. Sometimes I think I'm busy, and then I look back and I realize, oh man, I just spent 30 minutes on TikTok, or I just spent 30 minutes on Instagram. Or hey, I do enjoy football. I'm a big Packers fan, and some people would consider watching football a waste of time, but I don't. I actually consider it almost like a ritual between my wife and I, because that's just we enjoy watching the game together, and we make an event out of it, and so we definitely enjoy it. So definitely many things to be grateful for. If you don't know what to be grateful for, just look around. You're able to watch this video, you have your sight, you're able to breathe somewhat clean air. I mean, look at what's happening in China and how their air is so contaminated. Also, look at the internet. Pay attention to that. I mean, not everyone in the world has access to the internet. You at least have basic, if you are watching this video and you have the luxury of not worrying about your food, your shelter. You are probably going to school. You can afford yourself an education. You have access to a good education, because the United States, if you're attending engineering school, most likely the college, the engineering school is going to provide you with quality education. I'm not saying that it's going to be the best everywhere. I'm not saying that it's always a 10 out of 10, but if your college can provide you with an engineering program, then that's something definitely to be grateful for. So also your health. I mean, look at your health. Are you someone that is struggling? Are you someone that, and if you are, then at least you have a chance at recovering and moving forward. So my point here is that there's a lot of things that we can be grateful for. And I think that a lot of the times, just because of our nature, it's hard to notice them. It's a little difficult to pay more attention to positive things that are happening in our lives, more than it's harder to pay attention to positive things than it is to negative things. Negativity, because of the way we've evolved to identify danger and the things that are going wrong very quickly. Then that's rooted deep within us. So it's a little harder to pay attention to the good things that are happening around us. So those are just some things to pay attention to remind you of. And yeah, gratitude. I remember one time when I was, and I want to mention this story because I don't want you to think that I was always grateful. I was not always grateful. And the way gratitude actually was engraved in me, it wasn't a funny way, because so my dad is big on gratitude. He's like, you have to be grateful. You have to be grateful. So I never really paid much attention to this. But one day, I remember it was one of those weekends when, you know, like if you grow up with siblings or your parents, like there's some, not everybody's always going to be in a great mood. So it was one of those weekends. It was a Saturday, I remember, when my dad and my mom were home and they were both really pissed. I don't know what was happening, but they were both really pissed. And then my sister started giving them attitude. So they got into this back and forth and this argument. And then I remember my dad going up the stairs running. And then he says, in this life, you have to be grateful, like screaming. In this life, you have to be grateful. So at that time, I didn't really pay much attention to it. And I was just glad I wasn't my sister then, because they were both just getting into it. But then over time, I never forgot that day. And that day really, really stuck with me. And as I started reading a little bit more books, I started reading about emotional intelligence, and I started reading more about self-awareness. One of the things in happiness, also in fulfillment, one of the things that psychologists say, and they say that one of the key things for a happy life is gratitude and realizing how far you've come and who you have around you. Because if you're always chasing and if you're always just focusing on the next thing, and you never give yourself a little bit of credit for what's happening right now at the moment and what you've accomplished and who you have around you, then that can drive you crazy. So my dad knew what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about. He said, in this life, you have to be grateful. So that's my message for Thanksgiving. I hope that you guys, I'm thinking to release this video before Thanksgiving. So if you are enjoying it with your family, I hope that you're enjoying it, that you enjoy it. Have a great time. Develop or forge those relationships with your loved ones in your circle of trust. Okay, so the next thing I want to say here is, and let me know what you're grateful for, by the way, in the comments. So the next thing I want to say here is the personal development tip of the day. I have one tip that I have for you here, and it's actually a quote today. You guys know that I like these personal development insights and tips, and I like wise quotes. I like quotes from wise people. So this one is actually from no other than the one Elon Musk, the one who tweets something and he can crash the market with one tweet. That's how powerful this man is and how rich, how much influence this man has. He can say, you know, Bitcoin is going to the moon, and then people will start buying, or crash it. Who knows how people will react. But yeah, this guy has a lot of influence. And he says, people work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work. This is actually really, really important, and more important than we think, because, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of a quick story here from my experience. And a lot of the times when you go into work, when you become an engineer and you go into industry, there's always that repetitiveness, or you go to work and you do your work, and I mean repetitiveness when I mean the routine. Like the things that you do at work may be different, but it's almost the same routine, right? You work your 9 to 5, your 8 to 4, and it just becomes, you can become complacent, and you can forget the mission of the work that you're doing. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? How is you working on the bolt, or how is you designing a tire, or how is you designing an engine? How does that make a difference? Because those milestones, those days when the design is done, those accomplishment days, they come, I mean, depending on the size of your project, but they are really far apart. They don't happen every day. They don't happen every week. They happen every couple of years, or who knows, depending on what you're building, every couple of decades, right? And so my point here is that when you go into the every single day in the details, it can be a little difficult to always remember why you're doing it. And I think that's Elon Musk's point here. And there was a guy one time who provides training to where I used to work. I used to work in this government organization. And there's a guy that said, you know, it's what you do. He was talking to the engineers and everybody else that was working on these things. And he was saying, what you do is very important. Because there was one day when there was a machine that broke. And at that point, the people that were repairing this machine, they were looking for parts that they couldn't find. And so they had to replace this bolt. It was a little bolt that broke. And the bolt had to be replaced with another bolt, obviously. But here's the thing. The new bolt that was placed inside this machine, it wasn't up to the standards of the original bolt. It was basically a knockoff bolt that they found, and they just decided to put it there to install it as a quick repair mechanism in order to keep going with whatever they were doing. And so this man was explaining that that bolt actually failed, and it made the machine break, creating an explosion. And people were hurt because of that bolt that broke. And the bolt, if it would have been up to spec, if it would have been up to standards, if it would have had the right design parameters, it would have withstood. It wouldn't have caused an explosion. It wouldn't have made the machine break. And so he was saying, a lot of the times we think that the paperwork that we do, we think that the things that we do every single day, we become complacent, we can take things for granted. But if we remember that the reason why we are very stringent with design specifications, the reason why we want to make sure that we get the right part from the right manufacturer at the right time, is because that bolt, for as insignificant as it can be on its own, it can be put in a machine and it can prevent a disaster from happening. And it can prevent people getting hurt. It can prevent people getting injured. And he looked at us. He was in the middle of the crowd, in the middle of the auditorium, and he told us, and that's why your job is important. So do not become complacent, and always remember why you're doing what you're doing. So, and that gives you, after he said that, I felt inspired, I felt motivated. I started remembering, okay, now that's why I do it. And I think it's important to definitely feel that, because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then you just get demotivated, and you think that your job is a joke, and then you think that it just doesn't matter. So if there's no point to what you're doing, then you're just going to not want to do it, and it's just going to drain you, and it's going to make you demotivated. It's going to make you not want to go to work because you think that your work doesn't make a difference. So just something to keep in mind, and always remember why you're doing what you're doing. Why did you start engineering school? Why do you want to become an engineer? Do you want to, of course, be proud of yourself, and you want to make your family proud? You want to you want to go up in a socioeconomic ladder? Do you want to change the way, maybe your family never went to school and you're the first generation that is attending a school. Maybe you're the son or daughter of immigrants, and then you are getting ahead for your family. So that's all amazing, and always remember those things on why you're doing what you're doing, because that's going to fill you with positive emotion and motivation and encouragement to keep moving forward. So always remember that. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work. But I think we can extrapolate this and apply it to many other things. Okay, so now we are done with the first part of the episode, and now we're going to go into a Q&A. I'm going to take a quick break here, and I'll be back in a few seconds. Okay, so now my camera is not overheating anymore, so here we go. So the first one is from Not Caring. Not Caring. I want to do aerospace engineering, master's, bachelor's. Amazing. And it goes, I'm a low-income student, and I was wondering if I can do community college, then transfer to a state, or get a bachelor's, then get a master's at an Ivy League, I'm guessing. Or is there a better way to do this cost effectively and get a return on investment for my education and financially? Okay, well, thank you for the question, Not Caring. So the first thing I want to say here is there's a couple of items that you mentioned here. And it says, I want to do aerospace engineering, master's and bachelor's. I want to say that aerospace engineering is a great field. It's one of the highest paid engineering fields out there. And they do make pretty good money. I was checking out some stats, and then They start around 75,000, depending on your locality, depending on the industry that you get into. But yeah, so aerospace engineering is a good field for sure. And it says, I'm a low-income student and was wondering if I can do community college, then transfer to a state and get a bachelor's. So actually, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I did go this route. I didn't have much money when I first started my college journey. And so I went through a community college back in 2006 or 7. That's when I started taking English at my local community college. Eventually, in the same institution, I started taking credit classes, started taking calculus and statics and like all the engineering stuff. And so yeah, it definitely saved me approximately until the time I graduated. I did my first 2 years there. I got my associate's degree in general engineering because I did not have mechanical engineering. Got my mechanical engineer or general engineering associate's degree, and I did that in approximately 2 years. If you count the English classes or the ESL classes, maybe I was 3 years there. But I do want to mention that the community college helped me save between estimated $20,000 to $35,000. So community college, definitely a good way to go. Now, what I'm going to mention here is that when it comes to you going to a community college, the first thing I'm going to say is that you need to make sure that your community college has an agreement with state school. If you want to do everything in state, right, which is, I think it's the best way to go. If you're in a state that has good engineering schools, then make sure that the community college has an agreement with your state institution, the 4-year university. Because here's why I'm saying this. Some 4-year institutions have an agreement saying, hey, if you get your engineering degree or your associate's degree from this community college, then you can come in here and finish up your last 2 years as a junior. So if you get your associate's degree, then you go into the 4-year institution as a junior and you just finish up there. Now, if you don't have an agreement like that, then you may waste your time taking additional classes and classes that are not going to transfer to the 4-year institution. So that's what I would do. I would make sure that the classes that you take in your community college transfer to a 4-year state institution. So that's the first thing. There's a website out there that can check that for you, but you know where you live, obviously. So check out your community colleges, your local community colleges, and check and ask them, hey, do you have an agreement with this institution? And I'm not sure if that actually takes place with out-of-state 4-year universities, but it's something that it's worth looking into and something that you can ask in your local community college, because not all community colleges in all states are the same. So that's what I would do. Yes, you can go from a community college to state school to get your bachelor's. Is there another way to do this cost effectively and get a return on investment? So a little while ago, I was watching a documentary from Dave Ramsey. It's called it's against student loans. It basically goes over how people are making wrong decisions when it gets student loans. And I understand that sometimes you have to do it in order to get your education. But in this documentary, they had one guy who actually went through the whole process of school without paying a dime. He did not graduate with the student loans and paid everything out of pocket. Now, how did he do this? He did this by, number one, applying to a ton of grants, applying to a lot of scholarships. Scholarships was huge. So whatever you are socioeconomically, I'm sure there's an organization that is providing grants for you. So make sure that you just request, and then don't make an effort to write those essays, make an effort to actually want to get those scholarships. There's a lot of institutions out there that sometimes they even have money left over because people aren't just requesting this information. So visit those websites where you can apply for scholarships. There's a lot of those out there. So start digging on scholarships and then just apply to as many as you can. Some people don't know this, and they think that there's a limited amount to how many scholarships you can apply. But no, there's a lot of institutions, a lot of scholarships out there that you can take advantage of and take advantage of that free money. So just apply to scholarships, apply to grants, and then of course also apply to financial aid if you qualify for that. But just don't forget to not get student loans. If you can help it, do not get student loans, and then just keep applying for grants. It's going to be a little bit more work to apply for grants, but it's going to be worth it. Trust me, you can make it happen. I promise you that. And then the last thing that you mentioned is get a return on your investment. So if you can get a free education, of course, right? If you can get a free education and then you have a master's and then you have your bachelor's in aerospace and then you know exactly what you want to do, man, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I think that you'll be in very great shape in the future. So one thing that I do want to mention though is that in the United States, it's a melting pot. We get residents, non-residents, we get citizens, and then people that go to school that are non-citizens. So I do want to mention that if you go into aerospace, you have to be a citizen in order to get those good paying jobs. If you're not a citizen, then look into where you want to work after you graduate. If you're not a citizen of the United States, and I'm mentioning this because my friend who is a resident here, he got his PhD in aerospace engineering, and when he graduated, he couldn't get a job because he was not a citizen. For a lot of these aerospace engineering jobs in the United States, you have to have a clearance a lot of the times, and in order to get a clearance, you have to be a U.S. citizen. So keep that in mind, just mentioning, throwing it out there so that way you don't go to school 4 years and then before you know it, he's like, oh man, like I can't work in this secret area for this secret part of this aircraft or whatever. So just throwing that out there. Okay, so the next question that I have here is from Daniel B. And it says, I have a mechanical engineering degree, but would rather go into civil engineering in construction. What should I do? I have a mechanical engineering degree, but would rather go into civil engineering and construction. So basically what you're asking is, can a mechanical engineer be a civil engineer? That's kind of what you want to do. You want to get into the civil engineering industry as a mechanical engineer. And before I did any research today for this question, I would have said there's no way a mechanical engineer can be a civil engineer. And we all know that mechanical engineering is broad, and civil engineering is also a pretty broad field. You have geotechnical engineers, you have the geological engineers, transportation. So there's a lot of industries within each field. So I have seen some engineers say that a mechanical engineer can work as a civil engineer, but then it really depends on what kind of niche the civil engineer is part of. So yes, you can do it, but it's not just a direct swap. It really depends on your experience and depends on what you're trying to get into, because they're both very broad fields and it depends on what you're doing. It depends on your technical skills. Now, what I will mention though, if you want to be involved in the construction sites, if you want to be involved in construction projects as a mechanical engineer, you want to work with the civil engineers, there is a field that is called, right here, I pulled it up, and it's called Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing, MEP or MEP. And it says here on Wikipedia, a quick reference, Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing refers to these aspects of building design and construction. In commercial buildings, these elements are often designed by a specialized engineering firm. MEP's design is important for planning, decision-making, accurate documentation, performance, and cost estimation, construction, and operating, maintaining the resulting facilities. So basically, you'll be going in there, and it says here, I want to add this quick say, it says, MEP specifically encompasses the in-depth design and selection of those systems, as opposed to a tradesperson simply installing equipment. A plumber may select and install a commercial hot water system based on common practice and regulatory codes. A team of MEP, of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, will research the best design according to the principles of engineering and supply installers with the specifications they develop. As a result, engineers working in the MEP field must understand a broad range of disciplines, including dynamics, mechanics, fluids, thermodynamics, heat transfer, chemistry, electricity, and computers. Hey, that's right up the alley of mechanical engineers. So that's the one field that I suggest that you look into, and so that you can transition to the construction side. I was helping a young engineer through TikTok a couple of months ago. He was getting he was interning for a company down in Texas, doing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work, and he said that he loved it. Jimbo Pig, that's his nickname or handle. So if you're watching this, shout out to you, Jimbo Pig. And he mentioned that, yeah, he liked it. He enjoyed it. He was down in the Houston area in Texas, and he said that he was enjoying the MEP field. And but yeah, so that's what the field that I suggest that you look into, and that way you can transition to work more in construction sites and things like that. So that is all that I have for today. I wanted to thank everyone. Thank you guys for being here. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I appreciate you all. Peace. Have a great Thanksgiving. Bye.